And a warm welcome to all of our students, our distinguished alumni, our chair of our Board of Advisors, Leslie Puth, and the Fletcher faculty and staff. Today we celebrate those Fletcher students who are wrapping up their time at Fletcher, which is very sad. As you leave Fletcher and put your degree to use, we understand you may not be able to return for commencement in May, but we hope you do. And we will welcome all of you who are able to come back and participate. But for now, we really want to take the time to celebrate you today. This class of 89 students represents 28 different countries across 10 Fletcher programs. Specifically, there are students here graduating with their masters in cybersecurity and public policy, masters in global affairs, masters in global business administration, Masters of International Business, Masters of International Business Quantitative Methods, Masters of Law and International Law, Global Master of Arts, Master of Art in Law and Diplomacy, Masters in Transatlantic Affairs, and PhD in International Relations. Let's give them all a hand. Interestingly, the most popular field of study among this cohort was international development and environmental policy, followed by technology and international affairs. And it should come as no surprise that this year's graduates are already excelling on many fronts. Some of you are completing, I understand not quite completed, an impressive practicum at the UN Secretary General's office. And in addition to your academic endeavors, you have also lived the values of giving back to the community through planning and executing events like the Decolonizing IR Conference, last year's Holly celebration, the Gender Conference, and Asia Night. And I even understand that for one semester, one of our graduating students worked full-time in public service while attending Fletcher full-time. So as you reflect on your time here at Fletcher, we hope that you find it was an enriching experience. This is a big milestone for you, and we want you to take the time to appreciate all the hard work you've done to get to this point. I speak for all of us here at Fletcher, all the faculty and staff, when I say the school is proud of you. I also want you to remember that you now join the alumni ranks of many Fletcher giants. For example, Winston Lord, who was with us at Fletcher Day, the former U.S. Ambassador to China, Antoinette Saya, the Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, the late Bill Richardson, a former congressman, former governor, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Maria Luisa Hayam, Minister of Economy of El Salvador, and countless others. I could go on and talk about all the accomplishments of our various alumni making the world a better place, but I'll contain myself later in using the example of Leslie Puth, an alumna, our board chair, and today's distinguished keynote speaker, an exemplar in our alumni community. And I turn now to the future. As you have all undoubtedly experienced through your time here, especially in recent weeks, we face no shortage of global challenges. We Fletcher alumni have remained relevant due to our ability to grow to mirror changes in the world and to address new challenges that have emerged. And you graduates are the newest crop of Fletcher alumni and the problem solvers and future leaders the world needs now more than ever. Using your Fletcher degree, you can, and I believe you must, be catalysts for change, hope, and a more sustainable future. The world truly needs you to rise to these challenges. In addition to the Fletcher network you've built during your time here, I look forward to you energetically applying the tools you've acquired, your new knowledge, and your very strong work ethic in the road ahead. I know that each of you can make a positive contribution to the world because each of you has so much to offer. This past year, we have been celebrating Fletcher's 90th anniversary to honor our past and support our present, but also to advance our hopes for the future, and that's you. I now want to introduce this year's faculty speaker who is voted by these graduating students, Professor Chidi Odinkalu. Chidi is Professor of Practice in International Human Rights Law and co-director of the LLM program. Beyond academia, he serves as the chair of the Truth, Justice, and Peace Commission, a transitional justice mechanism established to address the violence in Southeast Nigeria. His extensive involvement in human rights includes chairing the Board of Trustees of the International Refugee Rights Initiative and sitting on the board of the Fund for Global Human Rights and co-chairing the Sudan Consortium. Professor Odinkalu has published widely on diverse subjects of international law, international economic and human rights law, public policy, and the political economy affecting African countries, and is frequently called upon to advise multilateral and bilateral institutions on policy. His most recent book is Too Good to Die, Third Term and the Myth of the Indispensable Man in Africa. And it reflects his deep insights into African political dynamics. His current research interests focus on rest, leisure, and agency in international human rights law, and adaptation and precarities affecting the future of human rights in Africa, and institutional guarantees for accountable exercise of judicial power in emerging democracies. Welcome, Chidi.
Thanks a lot, Ted. And I should now say Dean Gallagher. And Dean Puth, colleagues on faculty, colleagues on staff, students, friends, family, and members of the Fletcher Community. Good evening. Or do I say good afternoon? Good day. You can get that wrong. Let me begin by saying that I'm grateful for the privilege to be asked to join with us. A privilege extended by the students. And to deliver these remarks, as we say, goodbye to our honorarians. And my brief message is two-pronged. I come with a message of thanks and a message of congratulations. So let me start with the thanks. 2023 has been a year of great tumult within the school, on campuses generally, and across our world. The pandemic has tested our collective resilience and adaptive capabilities, and this global aftermath challenges our commitment to coexistence. We find ourselves in a season in which the reverberations from the gown of events. We find ourselves in a season in which the reverberations for the gown of events in the global town could hardly be more daunting. Many in the Fletcher community have felt the traumas of the many crises around our world very intimate. And many students have risen to the invitation to exercise the better angels of our nature and look out for one another. In addition to the students, faculty and staff have in many cases gone beyond the call of duty. Over the year, the ethos of our Fletcher community have been tested, and I think it's a credit to everyone here that those ethos have, for the most part, held very firm. And for that, I believe it's important to offer thanks, not just because the challenges are over by any means, but because what's been accomplished in terms of coexistence is a bar for those who come after the set we are sending forth today, in the hope that they can raise that bar. So let me try and get to the congratulations. We are sending forth a very special cohort in a very unique season. Forged in a pandemic, they are about to depart into a world in permanent crises. Congratulations, which I believe they've earned, wear thorny garlands that must remind us all of the uniqueness of our times. The last generation to have found itself in a similar situation ended the First World War and survived the flu. They were not deterred by the evident shortcomings of the Treaty of Versailles, which ended the First World War, or by the cascade of crises that followed in its wake. Instead, they persevered, and a quarter of a century later, in 1945, they bequeathed to us all, institutions of global governance, which have served us all with their imperfections for nearly fourscore. Now, those institutions are tested in both their foundations and their mission like never before, and a world in transition, arguably to polypolarity, needs to renew its anchors. We gather here in the week of the 75th anniversaries of both the Genocide Convention and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I sure had to get that in. But even as we do so, many wonder about the continuing relevance of these iconic norms of international law and of the institutions that created them and are responsible to ensure that they work. And for those who do, I offer a story of two West African widows. Miriam Sankara was a man 34 years old when her husband, Thomas, was shot and killed by his best friend, Blaise, in October 1987. Thomas Sankara was 37. He was the president of a country called Burkina Faso. Thereafter, Blaise Compaoré proclaimed himself president and had issued a death certificate which claimed that Thomas Sankara died in his sleep. Miriam fled into exile with her two children, and for over 2 decades fought for just one thing: to rectify the records to show what exactly killed her husband. In 2006, having been frustrated at home, the United Nations Human Rights Committee granted her prayers for the rectification of the records. In that same year, back home in Ouagadougou, and from Ouagadougou to Arusha, Tanzania, an African Court on Human and People's Rights was established. It had been in gestation for 45 years. And when the idea was first mooted, my mother was a teenager. The African Court itself was created by a protocol adopted in 1988 in Ouagadougou, the same city in which Thomas Sankara was killed. In that same year, the same man who killed Miriam Sankara's husband also killed another man. His name, Norbert Zongo. He was 49, a journalist pursuing a story of presidential corruption in the court of Blaise Compaoré. Norbert left a wife, her name, Genevieve Zongo. Genevieve pursued accountability for those who killed her husband. Unable to get it domestically, she ended up at the African Court on Human and People's Rights. I was a lawyer. And in March 2014, the court granted her unprecedented revenues, including $2 million in damage. But this was more than anything that money could pay for. 7 months later, in October 2014, 27 years into Miriam Sankara's widowhood, the people of Burkina Faso found inspiration in the improbable victories and resilience of these two women, rose up in an uprising, and overthrew a despot. They did not fix all the ills with their country, but they gave themselves a chance where there was previously thought to be none. For Miriam and Genevieve, they became the mascots for a country in need of inspiration. Time was their ally. At Fletcher School, the promise was not a false assurance that the path to human progress is without reversals, nor was it to provide any of our graduates with canned answers to the world's challenges. It is to prepare you to meet and to lead the search for solutions. In that mission, preparation meets opportunity. And for that mission, this school now feels able to certify that you're well qualified and prepared too. And so, when that opportunity arrives, as surely it will do, may you feel prepared to seize it. May you find around you the inspiration to invent solutions to last your community and our world just another fourscore. And when you have done that, may the generation to meet you say, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Odinkalu. Now I'd like to introduce this year's student speaker, who was also voted by his peers, Vincent Puybasset. Vincent is a Master of Arts in Law and Diplomacy candidate who came to Fletcher as a dual degree student from HEC Paris. He holds bachelor's and MPhil degrees in history from the École Normale Supérieure, France. I'm sorry, I'm not a French speaker. My Chinese and Spanish gets me nowhere here. Here at Fletcher, he focused on international economics, finance, and development with the desire to work with multinational institutions. Before joining the Fletcher Community, Vincent taught history and French culture at Selwyn College, Cambridge University in the UK. He also interned in the French Minister of Health's cabinet during the COVID-19 pandemic before joining Emmanuel Macron's team within the health and economic units of the Élysée Palace. This year, he co-led the Fletcher European Club as well as the Fletcher Finance Club and co-founded the inaugural Fletcher European Conference. After Fletcher, he aims to get professionally involved in strengthening the transatlantic ties between Europe and the United States. Welcome.
Dear Dean Gallagher, dear Dean Lenko, dear Fletcher professors and staff, dear fellow graduating students, and dear Fletcher community. Our generation joined Fletcher in unprecedented circumstances. For the first time since 1945, full-scale war came back to Europe, threatening global security and jeopardizing the international legal order. While the conflict in Ukraine is far from any end, populism and anti-democratic ideas continue to prosper on both sides of the Atlantic and beyond. Since October 7th, we are witnessing a new phase in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Reunited under the concept of the Global South, more and more countries ask for a bigger say on the global stage, but struggle to be fully heard. For days, the COP28 in Dubai was at risk of not reaching any collective agreement, and this morning, its final vote removed the mention of fossil fuel phase out. Instead, the insufficient concept of transitioning away was considered a victory. What a depressing world. But what a time to join Fletcher. These events have made us question our internal beliefs, as well as the current structure of global order. They shape the reality we will have to cope with looking forward. They also test the fundamental values upon which our school was built some 90 years ago now. The Fletcher School was created by people who believed in the rule of law, in dialogue and rights, and in a rule-governed answer to the rise of fascism in Europe. In what seems to be a new age of extremism, these values resonate as much as they are deeply threatened. Our Fletcher journey, however, demonstrated how solid and resilient these principles were and still are. With more than 70 nationalities represented, our community was not spared from the impacts of each global conflict and the debates they have raised. Because of our convictions, and we know how sticky they can be, Fletcher students exchanged ideas, engaged in debates, and voiced conflicting visions. But there is here a mysterious protector, probably dressed in orange, keeping watch over the Fletcher household. A secret presence that encourages conciliation and common ground instead of division. We all became knowledgeable and well-versed in countless subjects. But as we all set sail on new adventures, let's not forget the spirits we were given here by the protector of the house. Disagreement and differences may persist, but let's always prefer dialogue over polarization. Our time has come to join the Fletcher community outside of Somerville, which, to be honest, might also have some advantages. We will come as we are, with our fears, our doubts, but most importantly, our hopes. A hope for a renewed and effective global governance frame to tackle urgent challenges. A hope for economic integration instead of trade wars and tariffs. A hope for shared development and prosperity across nations. A hope for peace, for justice and respect of basic human rights. A hope for negotiations serving de-escalation and conflict resolution. A hope for technology, fostering innovation while being effectively regulated. A hope also for a world where Fletcher football wins against AGS. Where the Yasin and the auditorium does not look half empty during Fletcher conferences. And a world in which external speakers understand what it means whenever students present themselves as a MOLD, MGA, MIB, and now even MIBQM candidates. Some may call us dreamers, and some of us are. But Fletcher equipped us not only to be dreamers, but also believers, leaders, and makers. Studying here has been a luxury for each and every one of us. Our duty is now to make sure that this was not only an individual luxury, but a journey that will benefit the world. The pilot and author of The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, once said, "We are of our childhood as we are of a country." And I believe that now we are all from Fletcher as of one country. A home that will remain for us like childhood, very much alive. A home that will guide us and guide our actions and reunite us in some mysterious ways across continents and oceans. Thank you.
Thank you, that was lovely. And Fletcher is a home that you all can always come back to. Important to remember that. So finally, I want to introduce this year's keynote speaker, Leslie Puth, Fletcher 11. Leslie is no stranger to Fletcher. She's a Mall graduate and now chair of our Board of Advisors. And her commitment to Fletcher is truly remarkable. She has spent her professional career in financial services, first in the investment banking sector, and more recently working in the field of financial inclusion. She worked for 11 years in trading and sales for several global financial institutions, and then became involved in working with several nonprofit organizations focused on issues provoked by poverty and inequality in Brooklyn, where she and her family resided and still reside. This led to over a decade of engagement and work around fundraising to help these organizations grow. After earning a Mall degree with a focus on development economics from Fletcher in 2011, Leslie worked for Action International, a global financial inclusion nonprofit, as a senior director of development until 2021. She has served as trustee on the board of the Brooklyn Museum since 2008 and on the board of advisors here at Fletcher since 2012. In addition to the Mall, she has an MBA in finance from the NYU Stern School of Business and a BA in economics and French from Wellesley College. Welcome, Leslie. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be back in ASEAN. Wonderful to see faculty and staff, graduating students, family and friends of students, and also want to say hello to people who are participating online, which I understand there are several. Thank you, Dean Gallagher, for inviting me to address this year's class of Januarians. And thank you, Professor Odinkalu and Vincent, for your astute and insightful remarks. So I'm guessing that many of you may have expected someone a little younger to be standing up here based on my graduation year. I'll just chalk it up to life taking me on lots of twists and turns before it finally brought me to Fletcher's door in 2009. But I will also say that as a Fletcher student with 3 teenage children, a husband, and a dog at home, There was no one on campus who more appreciated the exhilarating classes and the long, quiet days in the McGinn Library. I could switch my phone off for hours. I could ignore the daily little crises that were inevitably brewing back at home, and I could focus on my schoolwork. It was really a luxury. The playwright George Bernard Shaw once wryly observed that education is wasted on the young. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I will say that I certainly felt lucky to be getting a Fletcher education at my more advanced age. I'm honored to be standing in front of you as we salute you in your achievements and support you in your next chapters. Each of you has a unique life story that prompted you to seek an education at this now 90-year-old institution. And I know that your class represents 28 countries of citizenship in addition to the United States. So I'm guessing that your stories are extremely varied and fascinating. I only wish that I could hear some of them, and maybe I'll have a chance to do that at our reception after this event. Most importantly, over the past few years, you have all benefited from spending time learning each other's stories and hearing each other's perspectives in and outside of the classroom. This in turn has allowed each of you to develop a more nuanced understanding about how problems or opportunities can be looked at, analyzed, and addressed in varying ways. And while the obvious main attractions of coming to Fletcher are the opportunities to learn from outstanding faculty, or an education that will prepare you for an inspiring career, the added value of learning from your classmates is something you'll carry with you throughout your lives. In fact, I will wager that most of you will not find yourselves in professional situations that will afford you anything comparable. It's an experience to be cherished and cultivated. And as you leave here with promises to stay in touch, I encourage you to keep that promise. The very robust Fletcher Alumni Network will help pave that road, but life has a way of taking you out of circulation sometimes, so don't forget to check in with your friends and listen to what they've been up to. This brings me to the first of two observations that I'd like to share with you today. Nearly 20 years ago, the journalist and author Thomas Friedman wrote a book called The World is Flat. This book examined ways in which technology had radically altered time, space, and economies for people around the globe, and what it might portend for the future. A few years later, Friedman wrote a book and added a word to that title, calling it The World is Hot, Flat, and Crowded. And in this book, Mr. Friedman explored the multiple threats posed by climate change and the critical need to develop and invest in green energy and green policies. Now, if Mr. Friedman were to update his book today, I would humbly posit that he might add yet another word to that title. The world is hot, flat, crowded, and noisy. The relentless cacophony of social media in all its forms, aggravated by misinformation and disinformation, has created a global environment that is screaming at us all 24/7. Too often, these platforms act as just that, soapboxes from which to broadcast screeds, ill-suited for two-way conversations. This, in turn, has contributed to a deterioration in the way that people speak to each other in person. It's become almost normalized for people to adopt modes of behavior that rely less on dialogue than on stridently making a point, using exaggerated language, something the economists recently dubbed the dysphomism treadmill, or abruptly and loudly shutting down an opposing point of view. We've seen vivid and sobering displays of this recently play out on college campuses around the country, including here at Tufts, and in cities around the globe, as people chant slogans, some of them not even really knowing what they're talking about, or shout past one another, or hurl anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, or anti-LGBTQ insults. In both the House and Senate, we see our elected officials forsake discussion and negotiation in favor of sound bites and diatribes. In the face of all this noise, if there's one thing I'm sure you all learned from your time at Fletcher, no matter what your course of study, that is that the skill, ability, and willingness to listen, and to listen critically, is paramount, as is the ability and willingness to put yourself in the shoes of another. So that's actually two things, but they're highly related. Your Fletcher education, with a focus on multidisciplinary studies, complex and critical thought, and finding new ways to solve problems through collaboration, has undoubtedly made you better, more discerning listeners and equipped you to understand, or at least acknowledge, points of view that may be very different from your own. Listening requires slowing down, processing, reflecting, and deliberating. Putting yourself in the shoes of another requires empathy, humility, and reflection. Endeavoring to do both of these things is important in all aspects of life, whether with your spouse or significant other, with your friends, your family, your work colleagues, or your fellow citizens. Failure to do this will lead to misunderstanding, polarization, strife, and even violence, as we've seen too often over the past decades. Listening and the empathy to imagine yourself as the other are, in fact, essential ingredients for the art of diplomacy. Diplomacy, that calling so indelibly entwined with Fletcher's identity and proud legacy. In fact, the degree that many of you are graduating with today, or whenever, February 1st, I guess it is called a Master of Arts in Law and Diplomacy. The arts of listening and diplomacy have contributed to your portfolio of skills thanks to your time here. Skills that you carry with you and deploy as you begin careers in whatever you choose, whether that's cybersecurity, finance, economic development, politics, or research, and whether it's for a public or private organization, an NGO, or a government institution. I guarantee that you will work with and confront people who do not possess these skills, and that may put you in situations that are frustrating and vexing. But your ability to listen, empathize, and reason will go a long way to helping arrive at more successful outcomes. The second observation I would like to share is both philosophical and practical, and it's inspired by me reflecting on my now 2.5 years of experience as a grandmother, which, by the way, is the most fun thing in the world. It really is everything it's cracked up to be. I have the pictures to prove it. In fact, I have hundreds of pictures to prove it. But back to my point. I have so appreciated and savored the chance to spend time with our granddaughter, whose name is Wilder, very 2022. See the world through her eyes, share her wonder at the most seemingly ordinary things that as adults we are usually too busy to notice, like sitting on the ground examining pebbles, or marveling as a snail makes its way across a leaf, pulling into its shell when it senses danger, or the incredible beauty and complexity of a single flower blossom. Beyond the actual observations lie the questions. Now, most of them beginning with the words, why or what? I don't know if you've ever played this game, but it only takes 3 or 4 consecutive why or what questions before you're getting into some very philosophical stuff. Like, Gigi, why do I have to nap? Answer, because you need to rest. Why? So your body can produce energy. What's energy? Can't go there. Or, why is that dog barking? I don't know, maybe because she's scared or unhappy. Why? Because something made her nervous. Why? Time to change the subject. So you get my idea. Sharing Wilder's pure joy, wonder, and curiosity is both restorative and awe-inspiring. And it has made me think of a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "The invariable mark of wisdom is to see the miraculous in the common." You are each nearing the conclusion of your academic experience at Fletcher. Depending on your degree, you've spent anywhere from 16 months to several years learning from professors, undertaking research, writing papers, and participating in internships and projects, accumulating knowledge all along the way. However, knowledge is nothing without wisdom. And I strongly believe that a Fletcher education has embedded the cultivation of wisdom in what and how it teaches students. That said, I encourage you to buttress that wisdom by seeing and understanding the miraculous in the common. Please carry that thought with you as you make your way from academia to the professional world. Our adult lives get complicated and cluttered. Our schedules are pressed. We are besieged by distractions and our phones are constantly buzzing. It's easy to lose perspective on what is important, true, and lasting. So remind yourself to take a few moments each day to reflect on the many places where you can find the miraculous in the common. Stop and look at something glorious like a sunset, or something minute like a shell, or ask yourself, Why did the moon look so big when it comes up over the horizon? It will better prepare you to answer and deal with some of the really complicated questions that will come up in your careers and your lives. So thank you for the opportunity to spend a few moments sharing my thoughts, and I wish each and every one of you a fruitful and fulfilling next chapter after Fletcher.
Hello, my name is Maribel Blanco, Executive Associate Dean here at Fletcher, and I'd now like to invite our graduates to please stand if you can and line up so that you can be recognized. Who's gonna lead them? Follow Cindy.
Perfect card, right? That way, that Andy, go see Andy. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Me, Tan, Yen, Wen. Feeling with Colombo. Vincent Puybasset. No way, Mom. Samuel Brecker. Vaishnavi Satyabolu. Pinky Kodak. Ashutosh Patil. Pika Sobra Sharma. Gary Friedman. Ethan Malcott. Mike Bunget. Rovi Soto. Mari Nagayashi. Gilberto Calderin. Emily O'Connor. Turner Jackson. Megan McKay. Miranda Kumpari. Roque Yamasaki. Sarah Gordon. Ariel Shira Banger. Dean Jang. Natalie DeWitt. Vladimir Latskovich. Brianna Laney. Emiliano Polo. Now, let me just take a moment to also recognize the students, the graduates that are joining us online. If you could please turn on your screens, graduates online. And so now, at this point, on behalf of the faculty and the staff of Fletcher, I wish you much success in your next chapter and remind you that Fletcher is here for you. Please stay in touch, come back, visit your home, as Dean Gallagher mentioned already. I'd like to thank our speakers for their words of wisdom. And it is now my pleasure to invite you for a celebration. Fun fact, there's a bar on the mezzanine and in the downstairs, so lit up. And yeah, congratulations. Thank you for coming.